Hey guys, Targetpopper here. This is my Schmidt Rubin 1889, and it's all original. All the numbers match. It's in pretty decent shape. The cool thing about these guns is you can still get them pretty cheap, mainly due to the work required to shoot these guns. This is not something that you can just go out and buy ammunition for. And even if you did find original ammo, it's probably mostly click bang, probably mostly pretty dead. These are smokeless powder guns. Bloke on the range did a lot of research, and he debunked the myth that these were semi-smokeless or mixed powders. These were smokeless from the get-go. The only thing we're really not going to take apart is the rear sight, and make sure the gun's empty. The gun's been checked prior to the video anyway. I'm going to pull the bolt out of the rifle. Here it is. You got your locking lugs back here. You got the entire length of the bolt right up to here. So you got your bolt face right there. So your firing pin is running all the way through. It's pretty long. It's a hell of a thing. Very smooth bolt, actually. They're not too bad. I actually think this is smoother than the K31. Set that aside. Next I'm going to remove the magazine. This can be a little stiff. Oh yeah, this one's a little stiff. Helps if you push in and then pull down. And then the magazine slides right out. And set that aside. Now be careful, a lot of these 1889s have a little clip right here to prevent this from going all the way in. That's your magazine disconnect. When you push that all the way up, that retains the magazine, but it pushes it down and out of the way. That way your bolt won't pick up around. So don't lose this guy. And set that aside. Your front sight is just a base. It's not hooded, it's not protected. It's just a dovetailed barleycorn. And it's got two little marks on there. That way you can realign your sight if it gets knocked out of place. Now, I don't recommend taking these rifles apart super often because you're not really going to get anything good out of it. If you suspect the rifle's been improperly stored, if it got wet, if it's got anything going on, you think, it doesn't hurt to take it apart. I'm doing this for you guys, taking apart my rifle. So there's your front barrel band. Whoops, I dropped it. There's your front barrel band with its bayonet lug and its stacking rod. I'll set that aside. And I guess while we're here, I don't have to move you too much. Your rear band, there's a spring and a screw that hold it in place. Now mine, the stock shrunk a little bit, so I put two little paper shims underneath the barrel band, and that fixed my issue. Because when I got this rifle sent to me in the mail from Simpson Ltd., this barrel band was a little loose despite how tight you turned it. So the paper shims sucked it right back down. Oh, excuse me, paper shim. So that's on my rifle. You probably don't have to worry about it. Slide that off. Set that aside. I'm going to move you back to a slightly different angle. There we go. Now don't just rip this off because you'll have a bad day. What you do is you lift up slightly and then you kind of push and pull back. It's hooked right there. This little ferrule or whatever you want to call it, this little tab, hooks underneath your rear sight base. Hooks underneath your rear sight base, and then there's a hook or a lug right there on top of the barrel. So we'll set this over here out of the way. And you'll notice you got a brass collar that goes around the barrel right up here. This is kind of a way to keep it bedded, keep the stock bedded, but also free float, semi-free float the barrel. So it gives a nice consistent pressure on the barrel. You don't want to try to take this piece off. You don't want to mess with this. That's a good thing to have. They got rid of this in the K31s. Now it's just the wood surfaces that bear on the barrel itself. I'm going to move you back over here. I'm going to flip the rifle over. This is where it gets a little fun because there's 1, 2, 3, 4 screws here. So we're just going to get started with this front one. And we're going to work on the back one. The back one is a wood screw, so you want to be very careful with it. You don't want to go too hard because you don't want to strip out that hole and you don't want to damage anything. It's a very coarse wood screw. And you got to keep in mind this wood is over 100 years old. If your screw does not want to come out, just, live with it. Don't take apart your rifle. I'm going to set that aside. I'm going to pull this one out. I'm going to set that one aside. I do like to kind of try to keep these in order. So in the background, I'll put this one at the front, I'll put this one in the middle, and I'll put this one in the back. It's not super important, but I think they only go in one way, so. Take out this middle screw and set that in the middle. And then you got one more screw right here behind the trigger guard. Now I like to brace my hand on the back of the receiver, that way it doesn't try to fall out on me. So just pull this guy here. This one should be longer than the others by quite a bit. There we are. Now we can actually flip the rifle back over. I'm just going to pull it straight up and out. There we are. We're going to set it aside for half a minute. We'll look into the gun itself, or into the stock itself. You get a really good idea of all the work that really went into these. I mean, these things are exceptionally well built. This one's not bedded super well. Doesn't have good contact here, and it doesn't have good contact here. It's got good contact back here, but it could be better here and here. It's got nice contact throughout the magazine area. So, not bad. Pull this up and out. There we go. Now to remove this, all you gotta do is just turn it. And there's your trigger guard. To remove your magazine assembly, just unscrew this guy here. Set that aside. Come on. It'll come off. There we go. Ain't that a complicated little piece? And this is just, it looks stamped, but it's actually just a milled piece. Set that guy aside. We're not going to take off the butt plate or the sling swivel. There's really no reason to. If you can figure that out. It's only 1-2 screws. I try not to take these off because you can damage the wood and the holes. You don't want to strip that out. We're going to set the stock aside. We're going to come back to the rifle. You got a lot of interesting information underneath the barrel there. Everything from the actual serial numbers, manufacturer marks, everything that you can think of underneath there. Now the pin for my trigger assembly, it looks to be staked, but it's only staked on one side. So looks like we might be able to get it out still without doing any damage. Yeah, we can still get this apart. There's really not much more to it. I'm actually going to bring you guys down just a little bit lower. Bring you just a touch closer. That way you can kind of see what we're doing here. My punch that I bent the crap out of the other day. I'll be right back. Alright, the punch is good enough for government work. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to remove the trigger assembly. I just had my hammer. There we go. There it is. What we're going to do is just we're going to punch out this pin right here. Being very careful not to catapult it across the room or anything. Yeah, I mean they staked it in, but it really looks like the only thing they really did is just kind of rounded the head over. They didn't really do any damage to it. So we're gonna put our thumb down in this, remove our punch, remove our trigger assembly. There's a spring in here, but I don't know. It seems pretty well put in place. Yeah, I'm just gonna leave that alone. I don't feel like there's any need to take that out. I might put a little oil in there, but that's it. And there's your trigger assembly. Pretty simple little guy. I mean, it's funny that they engineered something so simple as this, but then your magazine release is that. Okay. So we're going to set that aside. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to try to take out the bolt release. It actually looks like it wants to just kind of come out by itself. If I can push that out. Oh yeah, it's going to want to come from this side. So I'm going to put my punch on top here. I recommend brass punches. That way if you slip, man, this one does not want to move. You know what? That one's been rolled over, almost like a rivet. I'm not saying that's how they did it, but this one looks like it got mussed with a little bit. Yeah, this one's permanent by the look of it. I can't get it out. The head's been rolled over enough to where we can't get it. I never noticed that before. Huh. That's interesting. Well, okay, so we won't be taking that out. We can definitely take out the ejector, though. Your ejector is just a little nub on the inside of here, and it's held in by a screw. I don't recommend taking this out unless you got something to put this in, like a little Tupperware, and you know exactly what you're doing. Oh, this one's stiff. Hopefully I can get that out. I don't know if I'm going to be able to. There it goes. There it is, and that's your ejector. That's what kicks your casing out. This guy rides in here. Oh, excuse me. Rides in here. That way on the back of your bolt throw, that's what kicks the case. So that is the rifle itself. Now we're going to move on to the magazine, and we're going to move on to the bolt. I'm going to push this to the back just a little bit. And set some of my stuff aside. Let's do the magazine first. The magazine on these is incredibly easy. All you do is push on from the front to the back, and your follower comes right out. It's just a rolled piece of steel. Very simple. And then your spring, that takes a little bit of doing, but you can do it. Just pull it up to this gap. Actually, just pull it straight back. That's a lot easier. So pull this square piece back and lift up, and just kind of work it all the way around and out. And that's your magazine disassembled. So if you need to get in there to clean out, if you got some water or some dirt in there, or your magazine's giving you some problems, just do that. Just make sure that this large rectangular piece goes on the bottom of the magazine and this square piece is at the top. So we're going to set that aside. We're going to move on to the bolt. We're going to take spring tension off of the entire assembly by pulling this out and putting it in the safe position. Now this is kind of a pain sometimes, because I got to remember which way to do it. And actually, let's do this. Don't put it on safe, put it between safe and fire, because that'll allow everything to kind of freely rotate. So from here, turn your bolt that way, clockwise to your right, and push forward on your bolt handle, and it'll come out of this groove back here, so you can come up and kind of sweep it out. And then this guy back here will unscrew. There's your bolt. There's the locking sleeve. And then here is your firing pin assembly. If you got a fear of needles, that might trip you off. Basically all we're going to do is we're going to let some of the tension out. So put that into the fired position. Or actually that's a safe position. We can put that on the fired position though. There, that'll give us a little bit more slack to work with. So put that in your fired position. Pull this down. And then your firing pin itself is slotted. So all you have to do is pull it off of the cocking piece. And there you are. That is the fully disassembled Swiss Schmidt Rubin 1889 rifle. From here on, you can clean the gun. You can do any work, any parts replacement, anything you need to do. I don't typically recommend doing rifles this far anymore. Since all the ammo you're going to be running through this gun is hand loads, it's non-corrosive, so there's no reason to take the gun apart this far. You're not doing the gun any favors. You are learning about the gun, and that's what a lot of collectors like to do, is learn about these pieces. So if you want to just take it apart to learn the mechanics of it, go right ahead. Some guys buy these and they just hang them on the wall and they never shoot them. But if you're set up to reload like me, it becomes a definite possibility. So anyway, let's put it back together. We'll leave off from our last point, and that was the bolt. So let's put our bolt back together. The spring doesn't matter which end you put it in first. We're going to pull down. We're going to slot our firing pin back into place. We're going to let it go, and that spring will keep it tensioned on that little notch. I'm going to pull this back into the between spot between the safety position and the fired position. Next, we're going to take our bolt sleeve. And here's the head of your bolt. You're going to make sure that the lugs are at the bottom. And for now, it doesn't really matter how it's lined up. Screw the whole thing back together. It doesn't have to be gorilla tight, so don't worry about that. Basically, we're going to line. You have the low part of the cam surface, and you're going to rotate it until this notch right here for your bolt handle is going between these lugs, and this notch, this furthest forward notch, is lined up as well. Next, you're going to take your bolt handle, work that into place. You're just going to start pulling back until you got something that kind of looks like this. Then you're going to drop it into the fired position, and you're going to do that to yourself right there. There we go. Let's fix that. There we are. Okay. There. Now we're locked in properly. I had to move that back to the safety spot. Not the most difficult bolt I've ever done. I wouldn't say that it's the easiest by any means, but I think the M95 carbine is a little trickier than this one. So there's this. Set that aside. Next we're going to do the bolt, or not the bolt, but the magazine. You need your follower, your mainspring, and your magazine body. Work it back down into the body itself. I'm going to pull it all the way back, push forward. Next you're going to notice that this is tapered. So you're going to take the narrower end and you're going to slot that in first. You're going to push down on the spring, if I can get my fingers on it. And then once you get it started, it's good to go. These magazines are not common anymore. Don't drop it, don't break it, be very careful with it. They're expensive. Wipe my hands off of any oil. Bring this closer. And we're going to reassemble. There's our trigger. There is the ejector pin. And there is the ejector pin retaining screw. We're going to put that in first. So get back to this side of the rifle. You're going to try to find which hole is threaded and which one's not. It's the hole that is closest to the muzzle. So we're going to put this back into place. Try to line it up before I drop it in. There. Cool. Got a little dust on that screw. It's got enough oil on it though to last forever. Take my handy dandy screwdriver. Be very careful, you don't want to cross thread anything. You're just going to put this in snug. You're not going to tighten it down all the way. Pro tip, the tighter it doesn't mean it's going to be better. It doesn't mean it's going to eject further or anything. So next we can do the trigger guard, or the trigger, excuse me. Put that down like so. It'll be a bit of a pain. We're going to come in from this side. and try to push with my finger. I'm going to finish it off. Basically what you're doing is you're pushing down and pulling towards the muzzle. That way everything will line up and you can get that pin back in there. If all you've seen was my forearm, I apologize. Tap that. Still gonna give me some fits, ain't ya? If I have my other little hammer out here, I should. I do not. I do have something that should work though. I'm gonna try to line that pin back up with the hole in the receiver. So I'm gonna pull it towards me a little bit. It'll go. I'm going to pause the video. I'm just going to get that back in. I'll be right back. Of course, as soon as I turn off the video, it slides right back into place. But anyway, I'm just going to finish this little guy off. We're good to go. So, yeah, whoever took this apart before me mucked up the end of it trying to just force it in. What I ended up doing is I just took the heel of my screwdriver, pushed down on it, and then it just slid right back into place. So, avoided that little bit of drama. And there's no active rust going on underneath the wood, so I feel comfortable enough putting this back together. I'm going to grab our stock. And from here, I'm going to zoom you guys back out. So I'm going to raise you back up a little bit and move you back out. So what I'm going to do, take the rifle, hold it by the rear sight, line everything back up, and very carefully put everything back into place so I don't bump an edge and damage anything in the wood. Just got to line up a little bit better. Come on. Just got to find out where we're bumping into. I'll be back in just a second. And we're back. Okay. There it goes. Not sure what it was. I looked around and didn't see anything out of place. So anyway, weird. Next we're going to come back up to here. We're going to put the handguard back on. I'm going to feed this lip back underneath your rear sight and back into place. So as you can see, that lug keeps it from bouncing around too much. You're going to want to make sure that that collar behind your rear sight lines up and it's not underneath the wood in any way, so it's not raising you up here or here. You want the lip of the collar to be in front of the wood, in front of the handguard, in front of the forearm as well. So from here, we'll take our middle barrel band. I'm going to take my paper shim, something that you probably don't have on your rifle. Push that rear support back. Slide this on. I'm actually going to open up this piece just a touch more. That way I have an easier time sliding the paper under there. There we go. And again, my rifle needs that little shim. Tighten this back up. Now I have no play. Next we're going to do the front barrel band. A lot of people think I'm crazy for taking apart my rifles, but part of owning these historical rifles, if you're like me, is learning the mechanics of them and how they work. And I'm not match shooting with this gun anyway, so I'm not too worried about it. Come on. There we go. Make sure it's pretty snug. Doesn't have to be gorilla tight, but it should be pretty snug. Move on back. And my camera keeps listing a little downward. Tighten that back up. There we go. Turn the rifle on its side. From here, we're going to reassemble our trigger guard assembly. Turn this back on. And that'll snug up to about right there. Just make sure the holes for the screws are lined up. Next, we're going to take our magazine release. Put that back in place. You're going to take this very large headed screw. And that'll screw right into the lever itself. Make that kind of snug, but not terribly so. Push down and out, just like that. Get a rag, wipe it off a little bit, get anything off of it. Next, I'm going to slide it back into place. Just like so. I'm going to put the middle screw in first. I'm not going to tighten it down all the way though. Just going to snug it just a little bit until I get a little resistance. Turn the rifle over. Move you guys a little bit so you can see what I'm doing. I'm going to drop the front one in. So snug that down a little bit. Put the second middle one in. The long one, the tank screw. A little resistance there. Then very carefully I'm going to put the wood screw back in. I'm going to start it by hand first. That way I know it's going the right way. Alright. This one, if you want to just do it all in one shot, go ahead. Not gorilla tight, but pretty snug. Okay. Next we're going to snug them up. Just going to alternate between screws. Until I feel comfortable with where they're at. Get back in there. There we go. And I'm not doing this like Hercules gorilla tight, just fairly snug. There. Put this clip back into place. This will prevent the rifle from going into disconnect. So there we go. Everything still works right there. I think I might have made that screw a little snug because that's pretty snug now. I'll slot the magazine back in. There we go. Everything's good to go there. And then our bolt. Make sure there's nothing on it, okay. Take the safety off. There we go. And it's good to go. So I'll reassemble properly. So anyway, that was the 1889 Schmidt Rubin. Thanks for watching. A little bit of a dry video, but I haven't done one in a while. Thanks for watching. Like, share, subscribe, enjoy, upvote if you're on VidMe. So thanks.